The question that nobody was looking an answer for: can the Askr trio clear Seer's Snare? It is their bonus this time around, so now they have access to a lot more slots they can use for pretty much any other skill. So I figured what a better time to do it than at least when this was recorded, because this is most certainly not coming out on the same day. Fun fact, by the way, you don't necessarily have to give them great skills to start out with, because you could re-roll them. As long as it's the A, B, and C, the weapon, assist, and special is going to be stagnant no matter what. So that's what I did for a good while, right? I ended up settling on only the highest quality stuff, including low speed res Alphon. That's what I pretty much did for the first 3 minutes, because I figured if I was going to get skills that I was totally going to use, then it should probably be stuff that is at least better than what they already have. And Seer was kind of in the same position, except not really, because her kit was already pretty good, so I didn't have to swap out anything. Only to realize that I didn't really have access to any of these skills to begin with. It's pretty much how you would expect the first 5 maps of Seer Snare to go. It's relatively easy, but at the same time, it was kind of hard, mainly because I thought I had some skills that I clearly didn't, and I was throwing units into situations that they probably couldn't handle by themselves. But because I was playing the mode earlier, I still had access to 20,000 of those weird currency things. So after clearing out the first few maps, I was still able to buy a good amount of stuff for these characters that surprisingly, or I guess unsurprisingly, was very beneficial to their performance. You know, stuff like seal defense and close ward. And I know you're looking at close ward and thinking, wow, that's bad. And to be fair, it's bad, but it was actually really helpful this time around. And it's not something I thought I would ever say. Fun fact, the Askr trio do not have res. You know who does have res though? Seer, who, by the way, is going to be the 4th slot. If you already couldn't tell by the thumbnail and all that stuff, which you probably already knew, but I figured may as well be Seer because she's the OC of Book 7, and it's a game mode surrounding her and her story, so I figured, why not? You know what? We need an extra 4th slot anyway. I could have made it like a far save or a Lucia, but I decided to be fair and use the hard-hitting Green Mage Cav instead. Anyway, because Seer actually has a res stats, and the first boss happened to be a giant beefed-out young Tiki, it did end up working out, because she was actually able to just sit there, eat a hit, and take him out. But the big issue initially was just going to get them in, because, you know, we have a good amount of units with a pretty big threat range. We have not exactly a lot of skills to work with at the start, and they're going to be hitting hard regardless, especially since a lot of positioning is going to be a bit more finicky with the trenches. Either way, it still works out because, you know, we're just that good. And it's pretty much the standard process. We unlock skills, we get new ones. We don't get a new row of skills to use, unfortunately, until the second boss, if I remember correctly. But we did unlock some extra goodies, which, you know, will eventually come in handy. And by eventually, I mean probably immediately, because 7 visible attack and res for Seer, who still doesn't have future focus, is still pretty good, just, you know, for dealing damage. The big thing right now is really just trying to get through the next 5 maps without dying, and that is somewhat manageable, especially since I was able to heal after the first boss. Because fun fact, I took a lot of damage by being stupidly careless. And secondary fun fact, 3 of the 4 slots being occupied by melee infantry is surprisingly, not really surprisingly, very beneficial for getting skills for them. On the other side of the spectrum though, the random slot unlocks were not that great, but they did surprisingly pay off at times, but not until much later, because yeah, I don't think low speed res was going to be doing much for Alphons at the time, or ever, but trust me, it does pay off, I think, maybe. Assuming the calculations are correct. Regardless, the big issues right now for me were just Alphonse not really being as useful due to lack of follow-ups and damage, and Shirena actually ended up becoming a secondary carry by a certain point because she ended up getting access to a lot of good skills she can make use of. I ended up keeping her PRF because, at least compared to the 3, it was still relatively usable, but that's also a very low bar for Askr trio weapons and, you know, Gen 1 weapons in general, because most of them already replaced it for arcanes. Regardless, I don't have arcanes for them. I'm not getting them arcanes. So I settled for the PRF that, you know, it was still good enough. But you know what was also really good? the super weapon triangle advantage, because even without certain kills and stats and all that stuff, getting certain kills and tanking stuff with some of these units was a lot more manageable because we have true damage reduction and all that junk because of their seal slots that just grant an absurd amount of damage reduction properties and damage reduction and yada 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 based on whether or not they have a weapon triangle advantage, which was pretty useful for the Yune map, especially going up against all that panic and stuff. But it did also help that we could easily just repo out and bait units in and out, except Sumia because she just kept canceling back, so I just Seethered her. Although after that map, we ended up getting our second row of skills, which actually made a lot of these units that I was a bit more critical on, mainly Alphonse, a bit more manageable. We ended up getting a good amount of skills for Sharena as well, because yeah, Sharena is just that good. And she eventually just became our distant counterbot when Seether couldn't tank a bow with her 12 defense. And really, it just became another one of those clear the next 4 maps, get more skills for these units type deal, because the performance really just started snowballing, and really the biggest issues were just going to be coming from these boss rooms a lot of the time. A lot of the other stuff was also just going to be getting proper skills, because, you know, that's important for some of these maps, especially the ones with 4 trenches and 2 breakable walls where all your units are separated, because, you know, I don't like this map. This map sucks, but it worked out because we're just that good. The one other thing I ended up appreciating a lot, and this ended up paying a lot more later on, was Escape Route 4 on Seether, because, fun fact, Far Trace sucks, but Escape Route 4 has fixed Canto 1 and has a bunch of movement shenanigans. So I was still able to move 3 spaces, attack, and then move a space after, and it's very nice not only for hit and run strats, but also not getting immediately obliterated by an enemy. And that's what I more or less did on Crumb's map, but at the same time, a lot of it I was just hoping I could actually do, because yeah, having 4 units come after you like that isn't exactly easy, especially considering, you know, one of them's Fallen Coring with a massive solo condition and a load of stats. The rest weren't as bad though. After that point, a lot of the maps just became really trivial, because I could just go in with Seether, run away with Seether, and then repo out. Fun fact, Escape Route 4 in a mode with no cancel control is pretty good. The only map I could really think of that was giving me a bit of trouble at the time was definitely going to be the Saros and Lysithia one, because there's an Annette on there and she'll rally whoever she wants. So trying to bait out units while seeing which unit she tries to rally isn't exactly ideal, so a lot of the time it became a lot of guesswork, but eventually I figured it out. And I say eventually because, yeah, we were like several turns in, but it's okay, it's okay. Did I also mention we got Snag? We got a Snag 4, which, you know, ended up being pretty nice, but it wasn't exactly something that was like so needed. But we did get our 3rd slot, which means that we can make Sharena, Alphonse, Anna, and Seether just complete juggernauts, which, you know, great, but they didn't really have a lot of C slots at the time, so I ended up taking some other routes that probably wasn't the most ideal, mainly because some of the units were harder than others, but it was still relatively easy again because 4 rows of skills and Seether, so, you know, that was always good. But I think, again, the big thing was always just going to be Escape Route 4, mainly because, yeah, I could go in, run away, and just have immediate protection. But we're still getting stuff like finish, damage reduction, no follow-up, all sorts of stuff. So even then, we're still able to take care of a lot of these units that maybe Seether wouldn't have been able to take care of. And a lot of it really is at this point just skill gathering for the final map, which is going to be a bit of a pain. But there was one other map we did have to deal with before that, and that was the Halloween Duma map, which, you know, wasn't exactly the easiest. We could easily take care of like 2 of the units that were already coming for us, but I think the big one initially was going to be Duma, because he has a massive amount of bulk and he has the Brave Tiki effect, so trying to get through anything with a special was not going to be easy. But this is where Snag 4 actually came in handy, because we got extra damage for it, which, you know, I wasn't exactly expecting to take this long with the map, but Sharena and Snag 4 made it a lot more manageable, which was pretty good. But also by this point, I was able to get Times Pulse 4 and Special Spiral 4 for Alphonse, meaning that if we could easily just get something like Wings of Mercy 3 or Wings of Mercy 4, we could easily just teleport in with Seer and nuke with a big bonfire, which would have been absolutely hilarious, and we ended up doing it anyway. It did actually end up paying off a fair amount, and I'll get into that way later because that's when that's when all hell breaks loose. For the time being, it really is just preparing for the final map. We have 4 other maps. We have 1 other place we could just buy extra skills. Even though we kind of drained through a lot of the resources, we had pretty much just a lot of preparation to go for. But the one thing I ended up getting, which became really, really useful, was future focused, because, you know, shutting off enemy turns is very helpful, especially in a map where there's a lot of enemies and it's an odd turn. Not a lot of them came into fruition, but we did end up getting a fair amount of stuff regardless. Then the final map showed up, and yeah, it was a bit hard. The biggest issue with this map was just trying to enemy phase anything, because we had Legendary Sheeta who could come in and kill you, and Lynn had Oath, so you couldn't even plonk with Anna because she'll just come in and snipe. The big thing was really just trying to take care of Sheeta as easily as possible, and because Anna has a lot of speed and we had the weapon triangle super duper thing that the mode gives, she was actually able to do the one thing she was never capable of: damage. But by that point, we also had like 4 units on their tail, so it wasn't exactly home free. The other big thing was definitely going to be Yuri in foul play, because he has a lot of movement and he has damage reduction, and there was no way any of my units were ever going to tank him. Although I don't think I was ever going to be able to take a Lynn and Veronica anyway. So what I was able to do in this scenario is that I could overreach with Seer, kill the Hilda, and then cancel with escape route toward Lynn in the hope that I could just future focus her, because that was definitely going to be the make or break if I could just shut off her turn. I'm pretty sure if I didn't have this skill, I just would have not been able to beat the map. But fun fact, I still didn't beat the map because she beat the res check. What I had to do is give her Fury in place of that, and then eventually, you know, I do the same process all over again. I have Alphonse teleport in with Wings of Mercy 4 and nuke Yuri with a Special Spiral 4 bonfire, which was incredibly helpful. And really the big thing was just going to be tanking the Bride Tiki, because she had a lot of bulk, she had a lot of gimmicks with her. She was basically another annoying version of Halloween Duma, but colorless, so there wasn't even any sort of triangle advantage I could get on her. Not exactly the best, but I was able to do it because I had low speed res 4, so I'm pretty sure Alphonse barely missed getting doubled. But at that point, my biggest concern was really just taking out Lynn and Tiki. Lynn wasn't really going to be as much of an issue because she didn't really have any bulk, even though, you know, she lives a Spiral 4 bonfire for some reason. I don't know why she did that. I took her out easy enough there, and pretty much at that point, it was just trying to get rid of the Tiki, and it did actually work out, but I wanted the flex instead of just immediately kill her, so I tried getting a Spiral 4 bonfire in her, and I did.
Above all, the mission!
And at that point, the map was won. I honestly didn't think I was going to beat this map, mainly because I was really dependent on that res check. I think she was going to be the biggest issue. There's way too many units that were immediately coming for me, so I needed to take out a lot of them as quickly as I could. And I just so happened to roll the right skills and a lot of the right things that allowed me to get to the point I was able to get to. I think future focused definitely was the clutch skill in all this for sure. Although Escape Route 4 and Wings of Mercy 4 absolutely helped a ton too. But, you know, shutting off turns is very, very good. Thankfully, we were able to do that. But, you know, there's no guarantee next time. Or maybe if, you know, worst comes to worst, I could just re-roll. Because also, fun fact, whatever you randomly roll isn't static, so you can't really get stuck as far as I know. Regardless, the question that nobody was looking an answer for: can you clear Seer Snare with the Askr trio? And the answer is yes. Now, without the bonus, I don't really know, and I don't want to find out.